Hello, good evening po everyone. Nice to see all of you tonight. Kamusta po kayo sa ating mga bahay? Nakaluto na ba kayo ng hapunan? Thank you for joining us. So, ngayong gabi po, we're going to talk about our topic for tonight, yung speech and language development and delay. And to join me, we have special guests. So, na-excite po ako kasi tatanungin natin sila ng ating mga tanong. Itutuloy po natin yung chikahan natin. So may I call on our guests? Kasama po natin tonight si Dr. Pabs Planta, isang developmental behavioral pediatrician. Good evening, Doc Pabs.
Good evening, Doc Tippy.
Ayan, and si Dr. Jean D. Hi, Dr. Jean, isang developmental behavioral pediatrician din.
Hi, Doc Tippy. Good evening, everyone.
Hello, at saka syempre ang ating expert sa speech and language development, si Teacher Kat Ambayet, isang speech and language pathologist.
Hi everyone, good evening po.
Ayan, ako, sige. So, yun ang chikahan natin ngayong gabi, no? So, language ang ating pag-uusapan. So, siguro bago tayo mag-start, gusto ko lang din siguro shout out kay Doc Olive. Doc Olive Aliman, thank you for helping us. Nasa Facebook po siya ngayon, kasama niyo si Doc Olive dyan. So, bago tayo mag-start, siguro, ano ba yung experience nyo in terms of speech and language delay? Maybe kay Doc Pabs and Doc G. Like, is this a common entity or ito ba yung kadalasan nakikita nyo pag nag-clinic kayo as developmental behavioral pediatricians?
Yeah, mauna na ako, Doc Tippy. Yes, actually, sa experience ko for the past few years, yan pa rin yung isa sa pinaka-common na concerns ng mga parents when they come to the clinic. And I'm sure siguro ganun din yung experience nyo. So maraming iba't ibang concerns, especially with speech and language. And I'm sure marami tayong pag-uusapan ngayong gabi.
Oo.
Sa akin naman, Pabs, more often than not, language talaga yung concern nila. So yung iba, as early as 18 months, di pa daw nagsasalita. Yung iba naman, 2 years old, pero konti pa lang yung nasasabi. Yun yung mga common things na nakukuha ko from my patients in the clinic.
Oo. Sa'yo ba, Teacher Kat, like, di ba sabi ni Doc Jean, ganito, at saka ni Doc Pabs, yan yung presentation. Like, what age do you usually get yung mga referrals para sa assessment ng speech and language pathologist?
Referral, it varies, no? It ranges. Sometimes you get someone as young as 1 year old because you want to get them started immediately, especially if they were born with, kung meron ng comorbidities or meron ng difficulties at the start. So they get referred as early because you want them stimulated as early as you can. And you want to learn strategies for that. Pero common, without these, siguro I can, depending on the parent, I can get like a referral for 1.5 years old. As young as that, concerned na sila kaagad with their speech and language development. And then it ranges also. Meron nang dumarating mga 3 years old na, 3.5, na hindi sila worried kasi nga nagsasalita naman yung anak nila. Pero they feel something kulang. Madalas, pag nagiging school age, kasi lumalabas yung difficulties, napapansin ng teachers, napapansin ako compare with the other classmates, then they start getting more concerned.
Okay, so parang Teacher Kat, na what you're saying is pwedeng age, buong lifespan, kahit na anong age, pwedeng yung makuha or doon sila nagpe-present, no? To get consult from you. Sige, so siguro bago tayo magtuloy, hello po sa mga taga Lucena. So ang ating nag-greet sa ating ngayong gabi, galing siya sa Lucena. I hope okay po kayong lahat dyan and all staying safe, no? Yan. O sige, siguro Doc Jean, meron ba tayong mga tanong? Paikutin na natin ang ating chikahan ngayong gabi.
So Teacher Kat, di ba meron tayong mommy na nag-share ng concerns niya about yung child's language or yung language ng anak niya 2 weeks ago. Meron siyang follow-up question. Paano ba daw niya mapapadami yung words na sinasabi ng anak niya and paano rin niya mapapahaba? Kasi pa isa-isa lang daw yung nasasabi.
Unahin natin yung paano mapaparami yung words. So that's vocabulary building. And I think a little bit na napag-usapan na rin natin to the last time. Ang kailangan natin gawin is to use very functional words whenever we are communicating. Pag nakikipag-usap tayo, nakikipagdaro tayo sa ating mga anak, no? And then kailangan din with this, kailangan natin maging targeted. Like if we're going to teach a certain vocabulary, siguro target natin siya for 1 week. Kasi we don't want to bombard or we don't want to overwhelm the kids with the amount of words that they're learning. No, we want to be very specific with the words that they...
Mga ilang words kaya yan, Teacher Kat? Halimbawa, is there
Depende sa bata, depende sa bata, Doc, and depende rin sa ano, I mean, the language, how language enriched is the household, no? We don't want to overwhelm the child, so you will have, kailangan nilang tansyahin. Kung sa tingin nila, pwede naman sila mag-experiment. I mean, wala namang mawawala, di ba? Like, they can try mga targeting 10 words in a week. Let's see kung meron silang mapipick up. Kung meron na pick up, how many? Let's say they pick up 7 out of 10 words, so you have 70%. So you have an objective measure of what the child can do. So from there, let's introduce 10. Pero within a week, siguro nakuha nila kaagad yung 10 words in like 2-3 days. Eh hindi exactly, pwede nilang, di ba? Pwede nilang damihan yung words na ginagamit nila. And then we also have to look at yung number of words, wag tayo mag-focus with the nouns. Kasi if you, especially Doc Jean, this is related to your next question, paano natin mapapahaba ang mga sinasabi ng anak natin? We also have to focus on the action words and the descriptive words. Because yung action words natin, tsaka yung describing words natin, ito yung i-connect natin sa nouns, di ba? So we can make them 2 words. Tsaka na natin alalahanin yung mga is, are, ako, ikaw, tsaka na yan. Ang gusto natin yung really functional words lang yung magagamit nila all the time.
Sige, so parang ang sabi ni Teacher Kat, nouns, verbs, eh yung mga adjectives, adverbs yun, pwede nating medyo i-delay ng konti, no?
No, samahan na natin ng mga common adjectives.
Okay.
Kasi minsan,
Ang
focus ka agad, grammatically correct, di ba? Like, boy is eating. Or, tanggalin muna natin si is. Pwede, boy eat apple. Boy eat cookie. Or, more cookie. Big cookie. Give cookie. So we have to target this in an isolated manner at the start so that we can work on the words. And then pag napipick up mo na si give, pag napipick up mo na si cookie na hindi mo na kailangang, hindi ka nahirap at mabilis na sasabi ng anak mo without you providing any extra prompting, then it's something that you can start putting together. And then rule of thumb also, at least for me, no, pag nag-i-increase ako ng words, it's always 1 word up. So kung non-verbal ang anak mo o non-verbal ang bata, we always talk to them 1 word level. Kasi that is what they can absorb at that time. Especially...
Ano example niyan, Teacher Kat?
Like for example, if you're playing, kung naglalaro siya ng... Or when you're just commenting, kasi madalas sa bata, di ba, you're carrying him, you're bringing him around, o car, tapos tree, bird, fly, and then samahan natin ng affect. Because the affect adds extra emotion and extra, it will attract more attention compared sa fly. Kasi fly, diba? Very exciting. So nakaka-attract na attention, the intonation already is very attractive. So they will pay attention to the word, they will pay attention to what's happening. Kesa sa fly. Boring.
Oo nga.
So, hindi siya
tama. Doc Pabs, Doc Jeans, parang wow, pati fly. Parang wow, it's a fly.
So, alam mo, animated, no? So yung mga parents, kailangan animated ka para ma-catch mo yung attention ng bata. Kasi minsan, yung mga tanong ng mga parents, Dok, paano ba nga namin siya tuturuan? Ano ba yung mga activities na pwede namin gawin? Aside from, yun nga, yung magsasalita. I'm sure meron pang mga ibang activities na pwedeng ibigay sa atin ni Teacher Kat about how to stimulate nga yung language ng mga batang delayed ang pagsasalita.
And I think then, pag ginamit mo yung animated words, yung, uy, no, look at the fly, uy, look ko there, sige, you're able to catch din, no, yung attention nila kaagad. Tapos mas magpo-focus din sila sa'yo, mas makikinig din sila. So I think okay yun to be animated, also be playful with them, parang hindi naman lahat teach, di ba?
Yes.
So it also be nice to play, interact with them, and then yun nga, be animated. Teacher, may nasabi ka na medyo talagang, I think, important, use functional words. So I think that's very important kasi makakapag-communicate na sila, di ba? Makakapagsabi sila kung anong gusto or anong kailangan. I think that will be very helpful for them.
Yes.
Tama. Yeah, okay. So may mga keywords na tayo kailangan tandaan, ano? So functional words, kailangan yan. So grammar hindi pa important at this age, no?
Starting, no, Doc, no.
Oo. Tama. So, gusto ko lang munang batiin yung mga nandito rin. May nanonood sa atin from Dubai, from Pampanga, meron from taga Cavite, Laguna. Wow. Deaf Evangelic Alliance Foundation School. Wow, welcome po. Salamat. So sa ating mga viewers, type in nyo lang po yung mga questions nyo para masagot ng ating mga experts who are joining us tonight. Yan. O sige. Ako, Teacher Kat, meron din akong question din galing sa isang patient ni Doc Olive who's with us tonight. No? So, ang tanong ni Mommy, hindi siya nag-alala sa anak niya nung una kasi akala nga niya advance. Kasi yung anak niya who is now 4 years and 8 months, maaga natuto mag-alphabet at saka kaya mag-name ng pictures, ng letters, mag-memorize ng mga nursery rhymes. Pero at 4 years and 8 months, napansin ni Mommy na hindi siya nakikipag-usap. So yun yung reason bakit sila nagpa-consulta. Siguro bago si Teacher Kat, I'd like to probably ask them Doc Jean and Doc Pabs. I mean, is this a common occurrence in your clinic na galing, memorize na nila yung natutunan nila sa flashcards, pero hindi mo makausap?
Yes, very common yan, Doc Tippy, So usually yung mga parents kasi they feel comfortable na kapag na-identify nila yung letters, yung numbers, yung colors. So for them, that's already speech and language. Ang nakakalimutan is yung ability nila to communicate with other people. So I think very important yun, yung communication skills na tinatawag. And I'm sure i-elaborate yan ni Teacher Kat mamaya kung ano pa yung mga kailangan natin i-take note when we have those concerns.
Right.
I think aside from wanting din to for the children to talk, diba, important din na yung intent nila to interact with you all also. It's not just about labeling the words or being able to say the alphabet, but it's also using it in the right context or in the right situation. So dapat may intent and meron ding want to interact with another person when they talk.
Right. Pag ganyan ba, Doc Pabs, Doc Jean, do you give a diagnosis or what conditions do you think of if a child presents in this manner?
Well, marami tayong kailangan i-consider kapag nag-present sila with mga speech and language delay. Well, unang-una, syempre, check natin yung kanilang hearing status. Kaya part of our history is actually asking them, kumusta yung newborn hearing screening? So, kung meron and it showed normal results, then that's well and good. But of course, it would also be ideal to have another testing, no? So kasi yung una, it was just screening. Ngayon, we can do a formal hearing test. So that would be one if you consider. Now, the other thing is, we also have to ask other questions. Baka hindi lang pala speech and language delay yung concern. Kaya napaka-importante yung general assessment ng other domains of development. Kasi baka pwedeng affected pala yung social skills, baka affected pala yung kanyang motor skills or yung kanyang cognitive skills or other areas of domain. So syempre dyan papasok na yung mga consideration natin like autism, yung global delay, and the like. So yun, I think yun yung mga una sa mga kino-consider natin pag may mga speech and language delay.
Aside from the general assessment, Doc Tippy, I think important din yung medical history ng child, diba? So part of the things that we asked in the clinic, what happened in the medical history, meron bang significant events, tama rin si Doc Pabs, ano yung mga accompanying concerns pa ng magulang or ng difficulties ng child aside from those language or language difficulties na nakikita natin. And based on that, there are other diagnosis to consider talaga. But laging look at the child pa rin holistically, di ba? What are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and then target those areas.
Right. Parang stemming from your question, no, actually yung birth maternal history, yung perinatal history ng bata is something that we really want to look into din, di ba? Antibiotic use, nagkaroon ba ito ng bacterial meningitis. So these are actually risk factors for yung hearing impairment na sinasabi ni Doc Pabs, no? So,
and Doc Tippy, yung family history, let's not forget about that. Sometimes, di ba, may familial or hereditary din na diagnosis.
Oo. So, dami talaga. Kailangan i-review with their doctors, with their pediatricians kung meron mga ganung concerns. So, balik ako sa'yo, Teacher Kat. So, halimbawa you encounter a child, ganito, 4 years old na eh. So, unang-una, yung 4 years and 8 months, late na ba yon? Parang, in terms of speech, ang bilis ni Teacher Kat, yes! Okay, so yun yung tanong ko, late na ba yon? Kung halimbawa, kasi di ba ibang parents nag-aantay sila eh, umaasa sila, hindi magsasalita yan kasi yung tatay nila late nagsalita. Pero ito, nagsasalita siya, kaya parang hindi na bother yung mga magulang, but they brought this son for consult at 4 years and 8 months already. So, how do you address this? And tama, can you elaborate, bakit late na to?
Well, there's no question about the fact na nakakapagsalita. I mean, I think their real concern is nakikipag-communicate. He's not communicating, hindi nakikipag-usap, di ba? So late na to because as early as 1.5, the child is already communicating non-verbally.
Oh yeah.
So meron na exchanges na nangyayari. So the communication does not need words. It happens, by using gestures, by using a look. So the fact that at 5 years old or 4, hindi pa nakikipag-usap or hindi communicative yung use niya for the language that he knows, then yes, definitely late na po siya. And this, what we would like to do is we have to find a way to transition what he knows. Well, we have to determine kung paano niya nalalaman or paano siya nakikipag-usap, paano siya nakikipagkwentuhan, right? Because we have to look at the communicative functions kasi iba-iba po yung communicative functions eh. So meron siyang requesting, meron siyang commenting yung nagtuturo lang, requesting nang hihingi, nagre-reject, she says no or ayaw. So kailangan natin tignan yung mga yon, and then kung tignan natin kung ano yung kulang, and then that's what we try to work on, and then we work on this depende sa kung ano yung kakayahan tsaka kung ano yung alam ng bata. So from commenting, ito yung madalas na nangyayari ngayon, madalas nagko-comment sila kasi di ba madalas tayo flashcards. Or books, picture books. Tapos nagpo-point sila. That's considered commenting na po. So, and then they can point to other things around them. So how do we shift this? So paano natin siya gawing requesting? That's the easiest transition. So from commenting, siguro instead na pag sinabi niya book, or just give the book. Para mag-shift siya. So hindi na siya comment, then nare-realize ang bata na pag sinabi niya or pag nilabel niya, makukuha niya yung gamit o makukuha niya yung bagay na sinabi niya. So nag-shift siya. But yun nga, mahirap sabihin for this child na dapat kasi ang dami ng skills at 4+. So we have to see where he is.
Right, oo. And ang usual question nga dyan, kasi di ba usually nga nag-antay yung magulang, parang anong tingin nyo dun sa mga sinasabi ng mga lola na late yan magsasalita kasi yung tatay niya late nagsalita. Sigurado ko, malo lang yan sa ama. So what are your thoughts about that? Tas ito nga, 4 years and 8 months na siya. Doc Jean? Nakita ko yung smile mo, ang ganda ng ngiti mo eh.
Actually, Doc Tippy, meron naman talagang families na may history of language delay. So minsan, pag late po talaga nagsalita yung daddy, it's possible na late din magsasalita yung child. But it's not 100% all of the time. And second, kailangan talaga tingnan language lang ba yung difficulty niya? Meaning, hindi lang ba siya nagsasalita? Pero may other things po siya na ginagawa to communicate, such as what Teacher Kat said, diba? Sabi niya, dapat may commenting, may requesting, yun. Teacher Kat, I agree with you yung pointing, yung showing and requesting and pointing, even a 1-year-old can do that already. So, dapat nakikita na rin yun ng parents na kahit walang words, nagtatry pa na siya mag-communicate. No? May turo, may tawag, diba? May call ng attention.
Doc, not even pointing. The child can just look, diba? And they can say consent.
Sabi din ako doon yung titingin siya sa'yo, parang nakatingin ka ba talaga sa akin, mommy? Tapos titingnan niya yung gusto niya, di ba? Yung parang, yun yung gusto ko. Minsan, di ba, ganun sila mag-communicate. So, I agree with that. And then, yung sinabi rin ni Teacher Kat na dapat kung ano yung level ng bata. So it's important din to know, developmentally appropriate din dapat yung sinasabi mo dun sa bata or pinapagawa mo dun sa bata. And that's where you work from, parang yun yung baseline, and then you move up, and then you try to transition to more advanced skills talaga.
Sige, maganda yan, Doc Jean. Actually, gusto kong i-pick up from yung sinabi ni Teacher Kat kanina, no, na, o sige, tingin lang, nagko-communicate na yung bata. So, can I know your thoughts lang? Kasi di ba during the pandemic, lahat ng clinics natin biglang naging online. Parang, does that make it more difficult for any of us to assess yung mga ganong kinds of, or to assess communication skills? I'm not gonna say language na kung yung the ability of the child to communicate. Ano yung experience nyo during the pandemic?
Mayroong challenges yan, Doc Tippy, no? Kasi when we're in front of the camera, unang-una, hindi natin na observe ng maayos. Pero there are still things that we can see when parang ganito, nakikita ko may gesture si Teacher Kat or si Dr. Jean or si Doc Tippy. So nakikita ko na gumagamit siya ng mga non-verbal ways of communicating. So minsan yun yung nakakalimutan ng mga parents or even other professionals. No, ang communication, it's not just about verbal. Meron din yung non-verbal communication na tinatawag. And I think it's important na you emphasize that early on. Kasi nakakalimutan nila na yung iba kasi once may words na, enough na sa kanila yun eh. So kailangan natin ano nga ba ang expected for a 3-year-old, for a 4-year-old, or a 5-year-old. So hindi enough na nagsasalita siya and then that's it. So I think usually doon sila nagfo-fall, yung trap na yon. And ang experience ko even for those kids na nagte-therapy, pag may isang word or mga few words, biglang, ay stop na yung therapy, nagsasalita na, so okay na yon. Ang nakakalimutan is, nagsasalita siya pero hindi siya nagsasalita at par for their age.
Maganda yan, no? Reminder sa atin, Doc Pabs. Yeah, Doc Jean, you wanted to add?
No, Doc, ako parang yes, it's more difficult kasi we are on the screen and they're on the other side of the screen. So medyo mahirap talaga i-catch yung parang, uy, yung mommy, tingnan mo, may gano'n. But then when we show pictures on the screen, some of them will actually point and then look at mom. Tapos kahit hindi siya makasalita, mayroon siyang oink-oink kasi pala may pig pala dun sa picture, di ba? Or meron po kong isang patient, may aso po kasi yung picture. Syempre, na tumayo siya. Sabi ko, saan kaya siya pupunta? Yung pala, tinayo niya yung aso niya. Kasi nga, gusto niya ipakita yung aso niya. So, I still think na pwede pa rin i-observe, Doc Tippy. May showing pa din, may parang commenting pa rin sila, even if without words, and that was sound effects or even through actions. But for the older age group, they would actually point it out, Mom, look! And then, isa-isahin nila yung mga pictures on the screen. Although it's still, mas marami pa rin observations if you see them in the clinics, but there's still a lot of things that we gather, even through teleconsults.
Yeah.
And a little bit, Doc, no, it evolved already. I mean, the assessments and the observations online, nag-evolve na siya. Kasi before, we would be very strict with regards to these parameters. Pero ngayon, ano na tayo, medyo easy na tayo, medyo laid back na tayo. And a lot of things really, especially for the younger age group, mga 3 below, it's really observation because you cannot base it on their interactions with you online. That will not be accurate. You have to get the parents on board. You have to get the parents be with their child whenever you're having sessions with these children. Kasi otherwise, it's always a risk of alam ba talaga or, you know, lagi kang may tanong sa utak mo eh. The parents know at this time, the parents know their children best.
Right.
So, get the parents on board.
Important talaga, no, yung role ng parents or yung primary caregivers kung sino yung kasama.
Primary caregivers, no? Yeah.
Oo.
Yeah.
Meron tayong question ngayon galing kay Jester, no? Kay Sir Jester Eusebio. What do you do with a student who communicates through writing only? Most of the time, he just looks down and tries to answer using one word pero pabulong. Ganyan, no? So the student is already 10 years old and tends to get nervous. Tapos kaya nalaman ni Sir Jester na nervous siya kasi nanginginig daw pag kinakausap or pag kinakausap niya. Sige, what are your thoughts about itong estudyante ni Sir Jester?
Siguro let us support the child. Tanggapin natin yung sagot niya, written, and then let's work on the verbal responses on a separate day on a separate time, not during that time when when he's very shy. Let's accept the answers, the written responses. So that this can, in this manner, nabibuild up pa rin yung confidence ng bata that he wants to answer, this will get accepted. At the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that he doesn't want to verbalize. So that is something that we have to work on at the side at a different time. Kasi we don't want to address it, like if it's happening in a class, we don't want to address it there. Oo.
Right,
Tapos, and then you'll be forced to go, di ba? Pasasagutin mo yung bata, ayaw sumagot ng bata, di mas lalo mag-withdraw, ikaw naman, you feel that you have to insist. If you feel that you will not be successful, don't even go there, especially in a public setting. You have to challenge the child, teach the child or help the child privately, challenge the child privately. When you get more success in that, then you kind of prepare the child that, okay, I'm going to ask you this, no, in the classroom setting. So nag-practice na kayo. So just preparing him and giving him that mindset. Tapos once nag-agree yung child, sanagot ako, and then you encourage him. Kaya mo na yan, nagawa na natin to, nang tayo lang, so kaya mo na siyang sagutin. So, you know, give that kind of support, give that kind of scaffolding kung paano siya, just for him to be more successful.
Right. Ang ganda ng concept na present mo, Teacher Kat, no? That concept of scaffolding the skills of a child, and maganda rin na hindi napapahiya yung mga estudyante natin or yung mga kids na inaalagaan natin. No? Doc Jean, Doc Pabs, have you encountered yung mga ganitong cases or mga cases of selective mutism? Meron na ba kayong nakitang ganitong bata?
Yes.
Doc Tippy, I wanted to share. Doc Pabs, mauna ako sandali. Kakakita ko lang ng ganitong case sa clinic. So I had a 4-year-old child who didn't really want to talk. Pero lahat po ng ipagawa ko, gagawin niya. So following commands, instructions, okay kami. So ayaw po niya talagang magsalita, but the parents report na may words po siya talaga. So what I tried to do was, inunti-unti ko, instead of me presenting the pictures, I asked the parent to present the pictures. Umikot po ako, nag-try po ako, pictures, colors, numbers, letters, shapes. Nakuha ko siya sa pictures. Nung nag-start po siya mag-talk about the pictures, isa-isa ko na pang kinukuha yung pictures from dad. And eventually, she started talking. So I agree with Teacher Kat. Sometimes when you build their confidence, they become more comfortable and start talking to you. And after a while, pag malagi ka na nilang nakakausap or mas maganda na po yung confidence nila, humahaba at humahaba din naman yung sinasabi nila. So I think that's the important thing there po. Trying to encourage the child to talk without pressuring them also or putting them on the spot. Yan. And then always encouraging and trying to lessen their anxiety. Paminsan kasi Doc Tippy, yung selective mutism, very anxious po sila. Ayaw pong magkamali, nahiya po sila dun sa sound ng voice nila. Yan. But once they get comfortable, nagsasalita naman po sila.
Yeah. Doc Pabs?
Yeah, I think I'd like to echo yung mga sinabi ni Doc Jean, no, about yung selective mutism. Kasi once in a while, we get those kids na sabi ng parents, doon sa bahay ang daldal, pero pagdating sa labas, mga social settings, kunwari pre-pandemic time sa school, sobrang tahimik or hindi talaga nagsasalita, or when they get into your clinic, talagang wala kang makukuha. So what I usually do is to make them comfortable. So tama yung sinabi ni Teacher Kat kanina, na you really have to support kung ano yung kaya niyang gawin at that moment. And then slowly prepare her for tasks that you want him or you want her to do later on. So yung selective mutism kasi it's a form of anxiety. So kapag medyo ano na siya, medyo mas malala na, siguro we also need to refer them for intervention with our partners, the mga child psychologists. Kasi sometimes, syempre, even yung mga parents or even some teachers, despite doing mga strategies, minsan sabihin nila, Doc, na-try na namin lahat ng mga pwedeng gawin pero hindi pa rin. So yun yung mga time na baka kailangan na natin ng tulong ng isa pang professional. But yes, we'll start with setting up a very relaxed na environment muna without pressuring. Ayaw natin na bumaba yung self-confidence nila by putting too much pressure on them.
Oo, ganda yan. So parang maaari pala na ang presentation is speech delay, but when you look deeper pa, nakikita mo, oy, may component of anxiety din pala to, or or some other comorbidity, no, na nakikita natin. Yan. Sige. Meron tayong, sige, babati muna ako. So, meron tayong viewers from Nueva Ecija, from Quezon City. Hi, China. Nag-greet din siya sa ating FB. So, ito, meron pa akong isang case dito. Sabi, okay lang po ba na nakakaintindi naman sa mga utos, nakakasunod naman sa mga parang commands yung anak ko, pero paisa-isa lang siya or paisa-isa lang yung nasasabi niya. Okay ba yun? Or is that counted already as speech delay? Bigyan ko ng age. Kunyari, mga 1.5-year-old na nakakasunod naman ng utos. So, siguro bigyan natin ng parang pakita natin yung differences, no? At 1.5, ganon, nakakasunod, pero paisa-isa lang yung nasasabi. Versus a 3-year-old na nakakasunod din, pero paisa-isa rin yung nasasabi. Meron bang difference na kailangan hanapin yung parents if there's that difference in their ages?
Malaki, Doc. I mean, we're talking about a 1.5-year-old child. There's no expectation na nagsasalita pa yung bata. Although the child can probably make sounds or can probably vocalize. And there are some na very advanced na nakakapag one word na talaga, no? But for sure po, meron ng nakakasunod na rin, nakaka-follow ng directions at 1.5. Compare mo sa 3-year-old na nakaka-follow pero hindi nagsasalita. A child at 3 is very talkative. So, nagkukwento na yan, nagtatanong na, nagre-repair, they question things, you know. So, marami nang nagagawa ang bata communicatively at 3 years old. So, ang laki po ng difference ng expectations. Siguro po, if you want to put an age on it po talaga, malaki po kasi ang burst ng language at 2.5 to 3 years old. Napakalaki. So there's a big leeway, mga 1.5 to 2.5, because this is when the child is starting to build up their vocabulary and their language. So minsan makakakita ka ng bata na nasa 1-word level or 2 words level at 2.5. Pero pag patong ng 2.5, bibilis na yan. Ang bilis ng development.
Exponential, parang sumasabog.
Exponential. The vocabulary builds, the number of words build, the communicative behaviors build. Until 3, kasi fine-tuning na lang yan eh. Pagdating ng 3 years old up, it's fine-tuning na eh. Ng that kind of language. And then, of course, the ideas gets organization of ideas, sequencing of ideas, diba? Theory of mind, pero later pa yon, mamaya pa yon. Pero, you know, that perspective. So, ang laki ng ano niya.
Okay. Sige, thanks. Thanks for that, Teacher Kat. Madalas, nakakarinig tayo, diba? Yung mga iba-ibang parang programs na in-offer din ng mga speech paths natin, Teacher Kat. So, like, halimbawa, pag nakita ko na nakalagay prompt, level 1. Ano ibig sabihin nun? So, di ba meron tayong mga naririnig? Doc Jean, ano pa yung mga naririnig nyo? Prompt, may hanin.
Hanin, yes.
Oo.
AAC, Teacher Kat.
AAC, yes. Pwede mo bang i-differentiate yon from us, Teacher Kat? Parang kahit na broad strokes, if you can give us some idea, ano ba itong mga programs na to? At saka ano yung bagay na conditions relating it to the different facets of speech and language?
Siguro, let's start with prompt, no? Prompt is mostly for children who have, ano ba to?
Yung mga
mental block
oromotor.
ako, no? Yung ano niya.
Oo.
Yung sa
Mga oromotor skills nila, di ba?
Kailangan ko so si Google na ano ko. But anyway, when they search out prompt, this is more for kids who has difficulty speaking, and usually doctors will recommend this for kids na hirap magsalita o yung coordination, the sounds that they produce is not at par or is not correct. So articulation, or especially for apraxic kids. So it's more of motor processing. So if you have motor processing issues, articulation issues, then you go for prompt, or the doctors will refer to prompt. Hanen is a language stimulation technique. So this is it starts very young, maybe 1.5 years old. You can start applying the strategies from Hanen, and it is applied all the way. I mean, until you develop language, and kasi the strategies naman is forever there, no? And nag-iiba lang siya ng targets o nag-iiba lang siya ng product, pero the strategies are the same. So mag-iiba lang yung mag-iiba lang yung outcome ng production, ng expressive production or the communication. So ano pa yung isa, Doc? Ito sa AAC. AAC.
AAC.
AAC, augmentative alternative device o baliktad. Communicative device. So this is when they use an alternate device. So like your iPads, or for popular example for this one is the Proloco. Or your communication boards. Your communication boards or the PEX is the more low-tech approach for the AAC. So you use the communication boards or the iPad for communication because the child has difficulty communicating. Maraming issues dito, no? I think kung meron tayong pag-uusapan, it's this one. Kasi maraming parents ang hesitant to use the AAC because they feel that once they use the AAC, the child will not talk anymore.
Oo, fear nga yan ng ibang parents, di ba? Parang, ibig sabihin ba nito, Teach, nag-give up ka na sa anak ko na hindi na siya magsasalita, kaya ito na yung in-introduce mo, nag-text na tayo or gumamit na tayo ng app, no? That's a common concern of some of our parents, or a common fear of some of our parents.
And I just like to say that always, the primary goal for a child is to, for a speech language pathologist or for us, is for the child to communicate in whatever form. So if they cannot communicate at a certain time when they should be communicating, then it will lead to frustration and misunderstanding between the parent and the communication partner. Then we use the AAC. Because that will build that language, that will build that communication, that will build that relationship. Kung we withhold natin si communication because we want our child to talk, then it will just lead to frustration for the child. So let's put that communication in. Let's work on that communication aspect of it, and then work on the speech on the side. So we're not giving up on the speech. We're not giving up on the production, the speech production. Kasi AAC is also a form of expressive language. Hindi nga lang siya verbal, right? It's written, it's pictures based. It's you just point to pictures, but at least you get the child communicating. They can tell you what they want, and this will decrease their frustration. And if their frustration is decreased, this will increase their attention for more tasks, diba? Or for more learning. Kesa let's focus on the speech, and let's forgo that. And na-frustrate na sila, hindi na sila makapag-usap, hindi sila maintindihan. So the attention gets divided, right? I want to say something, even if I don't like, that's the word. If I don't like, then yeah, I don't like. So what do you want? Then they can tell it, use the point, they point to something, and then you can do that, and then build up that language.
Tama. So it's nice to hear then. Parang siguro a lot of parents will really need some form of reassurance, di ba? Pati yung help in selecting what kind of method is best for their child, no? Yeah.
Doc Tippy, I wanted to point out na I agree with you, Teacher Kat, kasi sometimes when you give them a form of communication, even if it's not verbal, it improves the behavior talaga. So sometimes, di ba, yung concern ng parents, ang lagi talaga siyang nagagalit or naiinis. And then when you start some alternative form of communication, in this case, AAC, or di ba yung iba po, sign language, di ba?
Yeah.
Nagkakaroon sila ng way to communicate with their parents or with another child. So magle-lessen talaga yung frustration, as Teacher Kat said, and then pwede siya mag-lead to improvements talaga in behavior. And another important thing, it does not mean you're already stopping na turuan yung child magsalita. In fact, you are helping your child or giving him an alternative way to communicate with you. And yung sabi ni Teacher Kat, build speech on the side. So pwede namang sabay. Hindi naman may kakalimutan. Pwedeng sabay po siya wino-work mo.
Yeah. Ito may magandang dito na-share din si Doc Olive, no? Siguro, ito din for Doc Pabs and maybe for all of you. Halimbawa, a child presents as speech delay when they're young, di ba? Or that's a common reason why they seek consult with us. Anong usual outcomes? Like, di ba, halimbawa, nakita mo siya, mga 2 years old, talagang 0 words, ayaw tumingin sa iyo, or depende kung anong nag-presenting symptoms sa inyo. Parang, from your experience, ano yung maaari na 5 years from now, ito yung outcomes nila?
There are different possibilities, no? May iba-ibang path. So, ang pinakamasaya ako palagi is kung nakita ko sila ng sobrang maaga. So, let's say, yung mga 1.5 or before 2 years old, nako, pag ganyan, medyo natutuwa talaga ako kasi alam ko, lalo na kung speech lang talaga yung affected. And you start the intervention very early on, I'll be more confident na in due time makakahabol yan. Kasi there is a percentage of children na baka language delay lang to, yung developmental language delay na tinatawag, or meron pa isang term na nabasa ko, yung tinatawag nila na late language emergence, yung mga late talkers na tinatawag. So pag ganon, and very hands-on yung parents, we started intervention, we did a lot of language stimulation activities, maganda yon, no? Maganda yung magiging outcome na. So by the time they attend preschool, most of them actually nakaka-catch up na. Pero binabantayan pa rin natin para at any point in time na meron silang concerns about language or learning, kailangan nandun pa rin tayo to support them. Now, there are cases naman na when they come, speech and language delay at the same age, pero yun nga, merong other domains of development na involved. Yun yung mga, let's say for example, may autism or may global developmental delay, yun, usually mas maraming support ang kailangan. So dyan talagang papasok yung intensive intervention, katulong dyan yung mga speech and language pathologists natin and other professionals like occupational therapists. So a lot of them, or majority of them, they may have some language impairment or language disorder over time. Now for those naman na very severe talaga yung impairment, pwede mag-lead naman into intellectual disability. So, yun yung isa pa na pwedeng mangyari if they have speech and language delay. Lalo na kung masyadong malaki yung gap when the time na I see them in the clinic and when they start doing the interventions. And of course, others naman, yung tinatawag natin na specific learning disorders. So yan, binabantayan natin yan, lalo na pag very significant yung language disorder nila when they're very young. So kaya,
an example nun, Doc Abs, ano ba yung mga specific learning disorders?
meron tayong tinatawag yung mga specific learning disorder in reading, or dati tawag natin dyan dyslexia, specific learning disorder in writing or written expression. So yun yung mga example na kailangan bantayan. Kaya I always tell parents na very, very important ang language, very complex, and we really need to work on that kasi bulk ng learning system natin is actually based on language. So reading, even math, no? Spelling, all of those are actually language-based. So kaya very proactive tayo dapat dyan when addressing language delays.
Ako, Doc Tippy, ang gusto kong idagdag dun sa sinabi ni Doc Pabs, we always need to check for the hearing status of that child. So, di ba, sometimes, kaya sila may language delays kasi hirap pala sila to hear or may hearing impairment. So, ang children with hearing impairment, they can start to babble or they can have a few words pero hindi na siya magpo-progress over time. So, yun yung pwedeng maging cause for concern na magpa-present yung child sa clinic as language delay, pero kailangan pala talagang i-check din yung hearing test ng child. So as Doc Pab said, that's the reason why we ask for it, yung hearing screening, and that's why we also recommend more definitive testing as needed depending dun sa case ng child. Yun. And then language disorder, sometimes talaga, pwede talaga silang follow on through to become your specific learning disability, or may hirapan na talaga sila mag-identify ng letters. Hirap sila magsabi ng letter sounds. And then pag magbabasa na sila, it would present as difficulty in combining the sounds together, di ba? So pwede silang mahirapan talaga mag-read. Yun. So generally, if we see them early and they're able to catch up during the school age, yun pwede talaga language delay lang. Pero important na babantayan pa rin sila kasi pagdating na ng reading, iba na naman yung skills na based lahat sa language. So parang yung foundation pa rin will be language and then they will build on skills from there.
Right. We see how important language and communication is talaga, di ba? Yeah. Teacher Kat, would you like to add to that pa?
Well, just for the some kids kasi or some parents come to me na yung nga speech delay, hindi nagsasalita, and then it's just so nice, it's wonderful to see na sometimes I tell the parents, if not everything else being normal, basta nag-click that they can use these words to get what they want, dire-diretso na siya. And sometimes that is just what we need to look for. Now, they
Right.
just need the opportunity to think about it and to remember it and then to say it. Kasi sometimes also, masyado tayong no, protective of our kids. We give kaagad. We always provide, or we anticipate what they want. And in this anticipation and providing for things, sometimes it takes away the need for language. So
Oo.
challenge your kids a bit in terms of that. Don't be quick to provide. Just, you're there, you support, you know what they want. But you also try to, kahit simple pointing lang. Kasi yun nga, sometimes, once they put that together, ang bilis ng progress ng bata.
Yeah. So, kunyari, baka konting nudge. Parang
Yeah.
konti.
Oh, yeah.
I-challenge din natin yung mga babies.
Kailangan
Kahit na
natin
baby
i-challenge,
sila sa
oo.
utak natin, parang kailangan ng konting challenge. No?
And at
Although
the same
mga
time,
anak,
sorry, Doc, if I may
Oo.
add, siguro
Yeah.
talking about challenges, no? Sometimes kasi may nabanggit ka kanina na sometimes nagwi-withdraw ka agad yung bata because of maybe sensory overload. This is something
Yeah.
that we also have to be careful about, na masasanay din yan, di ba? I mean, that's the thinking majority, I think. Pag nakikita nilang nagwi-withdraw yung bata because of a sound or because of a feeling or mag-withdraw sila, masasanay lang, so they tend to bombard. But sometimes, diba, I think I would like to introduce yung sensory differences, no?
Right.
It starts already when your child is born. So it's different for everybody. So wala siyang hindi siya, your child is not a blank slate. They are born with these sensory issues or with this sensory profile that we have to watch out for. Na if they for a lot of kids, it's not a problem. But there are special kinds of kids na they need special attention to, na kailangan nating supportahan. Again, supportahan. So if they withdraw, then let's investigate. Bakit sila nagwi-withdraw? And then again, let's put back scaffolding. Let's try to see little by little what we can do to help them out. Or seek the help of a professional.
Right. Ako gusto ko Teacher Katin sinabi mo about being respectful of individual differences, di ba? So kahit nga magkapatid yan, iba kadalasan yung needs nila and we need to parang adjust, di ba? Hindi yan RTW na one size fits all. So kailangan talaga i-match natin yung individual needs ng mga kids natin. Siguro bago ako magtuloy, mag-hello tayo sa ating mga colleagues. Doc Angel, Teacher Kim, hello. Tapos si Doc Kat, nag-message din sa atin sa FB. So, hello. Ayan. Sige, Doc Jean, may gusto ko bang sabihin?
Teacher Kat, I'd like to capitalize on what you said. Sometimes, diba, you can set up the environment to encourage your child to talk with you. So, paminsan, kunyari, may pinapaabot siya, diba? Kahit alam mo na, pwede kang, what? Diba? Para ma-encourage mo lang siya mag-talk. So, parang incidentally, gamitin mo na rin yun na opportunity to try to get your child to talk. Yung sinasabi rin ni Teacher Kat na parang give them the chance to learn then to communicate with you instead na lagi mong puhula, ito yung gusto niya, sige, aabot ko na. Yan, I think that's very important. And if it's in a natural environment, mas spontaneous, di ba? Mas relaxed, mas kaya nilang mag-communicate with you. I think that will be helpful then, di ba, to build the language. Yeah.
And
Ako,
since
Teacher
we're talking,
Sige, go, Teacher Kat, go.
So we're talking about strategies already, and another popular, or one of the things that I suggest a lot to the parents is avoid asking questions. Huwag tayo magtanong na magtanong. Kasi the communication becomes isang tanong, isang sagot. So the child will not answer or the child will not say anything unless you ask a question. Diba? So let's try to make comments. So tayo mag-umpisahan natin and let's see what the child will respond with. Or we can say, look, and then let's model. So that the child will be able to respond to that. Kasi if we ask questions all the time, nasasanay ang bata sa, okay, magtatanong si mommy, then that is when I have to answer.
Correct. And that's not often the case, di ba? Kasi di ba magko-comment lang ako, gusto ko ng ice cream. O paano mo dadagdagan yun? Ako gusto ko ng ice cream. And di sasagutin mo, ako chocolate yung gusto ko. Di ba ganun naman yung normal conversations naman natin. Talaga.
So, Teacher Kat, I think nag-work din yung following the child's lead. kunyari, may hawak na siya or may interest na siya, you can comment na about that. And then usually that encourages din to start a communication or a conversation with you.
And what is best about that, following the child's lead, you don't have to work on attention because the attention is already there. Diba? You have a target, then find or be creative now or be resourceful to work it in whatever the child is doing or whatever the child is holding. Kasi if you have a target and this is how I'm going to do it, regardless of what the child is interested in, you have to build on attention. The automatic, ang first goal mo is to build attention or to increase attention, diba? On a specific task. But the attention is already there. You just have to find the right material. And then, ikaw yung mag-a-adjust. Kasi ikaw yung adult eh. So you adjust, find a way to work your goal in.
Right.
Which also tells our parents, no, kahit sa house, you can actually really build on your child's skills. Kung ano man yung favorite toy or favorite food. Minsan ang favorite show, di ba? You can start talking about it and that will build on language skills. And also yung intent nila to communicate with you and join in a conversation with you. Aside from, as opposed to what is ganito or who is ganon. And it's all about Q&A na minsan gusto mo rin yung spontaneous talking and interacting with another person.
Yeah.
I like everything that you mentioned, no? Kasi I think very important or yung foundation ng language development is relationship building. So isa to sa mga favorites ko is you build your relationship or you establish that relationship with your child. Very important yun. And in a playful context. So one of the things para ma-stimulate yung development ng language skills ng mga kids natin is to actually play with them. So when you do that, you're able to establish a very strong foundation for language development. So, yun. So, just be natural. Hindi yung parang tinetest mo, what's this? What's this? What's this? So, just be natural. Maglaro kayo, mag-comment, and all the things that were mentioned kanina ni Doc Jean and ni Teacher Kat. So, I'd really like to emphasize that, no, you build that relationship. And that's, I think, one of the silver linings ng pandemic. Marami ako naririnig from our parents na, Doc, actually, parang mas na-engage ko na yung anak ko ngayon kasi I think before, pag nasa office ako, hindi ko siya na-engage. Pag uwi niya sa bahay, tulog na. As opposed to now, na kunwari may break from work from home, nagkakaroon ako ng opportunity to talk to him, to play with them, and the like. So, yeah, we have to go back to the roots of language foundation.
Wow, ang ganda niya, no? Parang, yes, meron din naman palang magandang na nangyayari at this time, no? And that makes us very hopeful. Siguro ito, hindi ko alam kung matagal na discussion, we have a few minutes pa, pero meron ba kayong nakikitang relation about feeding skills and speech development, speech and language development? Kasi parang oftentimes, I see some patients na okay, hirap silang kumain or parang hirap nilang pakainin. And at the same time, hindi rin sila nagsasalita. Do you also see that in your practice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Teacher Kat, go ahead.
I think what you said are parang two different things, no? Hirap pakainin tapos or hirap kumain. So, hirap kumain implies there's a difficulty in eating. So there are probably motor processes involved. And if there are motor processes involved, then chances are speech might be affected. Tapos yung hirap pakainin implies a behavioral component. Or not necessarily a behavioral component. I'm sorry. It may be a sensory issue. So yan.
Yeah, oo. Kayo, Doc Jean, Doc Pabs.
So yeah, I think yun nga, yung minention ni Teacher Kat, we have to assess yung baka may mga oromotor processes na actually, kaya importante din yung physical examination where we're seeing children. Kasi baka yung cause pala ng kanyang speech and language delay is related to mga weak oromotor structures. So those are the things that we really look into during an evaluation.
Doc Tippy, aside from the weak oromotor structure, it's also the oromotor coordination. So minsan, difficulty in pronunciation or articulation or speech can also present with, minsan nag-choke pala sila, pagka kumakain or hirap silang nguyain pag masyadong tough yung meat, yun din yung pwede nilang presentation. So it's really important then to check kung meron ba talagang anatomic causes yung difficulties nila with either eating or speech delay.
Oo, yan yung hinahanap din ng mga doctors during the consults, no? Siguro ito, last question na talaga. Teacher Kat, like, do you have certain criteria to say na, kasi di ba merong mga parents, parang ang tagal na nagsispeech ng anak ko or ang tagal na ng therapy niya. Meron ba tayong criteria when to discharge the child from speech therapy or maybe from our doctors then? Like, when would you recommend na, sige, pwede natin i-wean from speech and language therapy?
I mean, for me, how? I don't know.
Or
I
forever
guess
ba
I
to?
would have to work with the goals of the parent.
Okay.
That is safe. Kasi sometimes we see other things that we need to work on, but then the goal of the parent is this, and if you cannot jive, if you cannot meet, then we will have to go with the goal of the parent, right? You may see other things, but the parent decides not to, or they're happy with where their child is and they will parang explore it in a different way or try to improve it in a different way, then we have to respect that. So I will go with the goals of the parent for the speech and language part. I can make recommendations, yes, but it's up to the parent.
Galing. So partnership talaga, no, ng parents and their therapists, no? Doc Pabs, Doc Jean, you want to add?
Well, for me,
Agree.
agree with the goals of the parents. Kasi syempre, there are also other areas of concern minsan, no? Aside from, of course, yung economic burden that comes with yung intervention. So, in our setting, I am very respectful of yung mga needs nila, ano ba yung priorities natin at this time, especially now, during this time of the pandemic. So kung yung goal nga nila for that is na-achieve na nila and they're happy about that, then I would say, sige, I think it would also be good to do a developmental reevaluation or maybe an assessment with a speech and language pathologist para if the child is already at par, at least yung mga basic skills that we expect them at that point, then I would say sometimes I involve the parents in the decision making. I don't dictate. I want them to be part of the entire management. And then we agree. And then hopefully na minsan we also arrange meetings with mga therapists, no? And then if we all agree na, sige, pwede na, and then maybe we need to focus on other things. Now kung wala naman, then that's well and good. And pwede na discharge.
I think, Doc Tippy, aside from aligning the parents' goals, diba, and looking at the child's capabilities, whether it is close to the age of that child already or developmentally appropriate already for that child, I think when we eventually decide to as a parang consensus among the team, it will be important then to tell them the parents what they can do at home. So, kunyari, tigil na tayo ng speech, pero pwede pa rin itong gawin to continuously improve the language abilities of the child. And second, also give them the red flags. Pag nakita mo na to or pag napansin mo nahihirapan na siya ganito, please come again and let's evaluate again and see. Kasi nga, as Doc Tabs also mentioned kanina, di ba, it will progress over time and there are different outcomes. And so we want to keep monitoring and see also how the language skills progress without the intervention. And then yung parents lang talaga yung nag-build ng language skills nila.
Tama, oo. So important.
Doc, if I may add, Doc, candidly lang, siguro papakawalan ko yung bata pag marunong na siya magsumbong. Kailangan nila matuto magsumbong. You know, they have to report on what's happening around them, what's happening to them. I think that's very important.
So important.
And the parents, again, going back to relationships, the parents have to create this environment or this relationship where and the child can tell them anything. Because we want the child to feel secure. Yeah. So kailangan nila magsumbong. Pag hindi sila pwede nagsusumbong, hindi ko sila papakawalan.
O magandang goal yan. Kailangan marunong na magsumbong mga anak natin bago kayo discharge ng teacher ka. Sige. So I guess, ang dami natin na pag-usapan ngayon. And ito na, tapos na yung hour natin. But before I let all of you go, any last messages, pabaon sa ating mga nakikinig tonight?
Kaya umpisahan ko na. So for our parents or caregivers na who have concerns about their child's language development, the very first time that you have a hunch or meron kayong concern about their development, seek consult with your pediatrician or with your developmental pediatrician. And then ang goal natin is early intervention. So yun yung gusto ko lang i-impart bago tayo matapos ito.
O Doc Paps,
Thank you,
kahit
Doc
hindi
Paps.
concerned, pero hunch lang, di ka sure, nagdadalawang isip ka, talk to your pediatrician. So you have more experts' advice or experts' opinion, and then see a professional as needed. And even if kahabol na sila or may intervention na, there's still monitoring that's needed so that you will prevent some long-term outcomes na ayaw natin na makita. So aside from the early intervention, there's also a need to monitor this language skills over time.
Okay, thanks, Doc Jean and Doc Teacher Kat.
For me, play with your child, explore with your child, and discover with your child. Because with this is where you build your relationships with your children. When you build your relationships, language will follow. Promise.
Okay. Ang ganda niyan. Tama. So, relationships. Actually, for those of you who are curious, saan ba natin makikita si Teacher Kat? Ipopost po namin kung paano natin, alam nyo, mahirap po talaga humanap ng speech and language pathologist. Actually, mga DevPeds, mga colleagues ko, mahirap din po silang hanapin. Pero post lang natin, Doc Jean, kung saan natin makikita si Teacher Kat in case you are interested to find out where you can catch her. So, popost po namin mamaya. But, siguro, i-close ko lang muna. Maraming salamat po sa ating mga guests this evening, Doc Pabs, Doc Jean, Teacher Kat. Thank you for joining us. At sa ating mga audience na very curious, paano ba natin matutulungan yung mga bata na minamahal natin at inaalagaan natin, ano? So, with that, I would like to say thank you very much. This is Dr. Tippy, MedMom, thankful for special moments that truly matter to us. So remember, every moment is special and should be cherished. So maraming salamat po. Stay safe. Take care, everyone. Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat.